Here we are, getting ready. All right, let's see here. Let's just see what we have going on here. I believe we're live, and as always, as is the weekly tradition, just let us know down in the live chat, I was going to say comment section below, live chat below. Just make sure you can hear us and everything is wonderful, because as I always say, a live stream without sound would be pretty lame.
Yeah, it's not even a podcast.
It's not even, yes, the opposite. It's not even a podcast if you don't have sound. So that would be a bad thing. So yeah, just let us know. We're looking in the live chat so we can hear somebody or watch somebody say, "We can hear you. We can hear you."
The chat up there.
I could put the chat up there, but I like to put the chat over here.
Oh, but I can't see it all the way over there. I like to have two.
Well, you know what? It's going to be okay.
Okay.
So, awesome. Sounds good. Very cool to hear. Tonight, we are doing African Cichlids. And part of the reason we're doing this is because there's been so many questions in the last couple live streams about stocking options and can I keep this fish with this fish and how do we breed, certain, and a lot of these questions are coming down to cichlids, especially African cichlids. So I thought, you know what? Let's center a live stream around African cichlids. They're really awesome fish, and I know they get a really bad rap. Before we get into the whole African cichlid conversation, a couple very quick announcements, as we like to do at the beginning of the stream. One, last week we announced that the orange and the red tricolor Primetime Aquatics shirts are going on clearance.
Yep.
So lots of people decided to take advantage of that. Thank you very much if you were one of them. We still have some limited quantities left, so if it's something you think you're interested in, I would probably get to primetimeaquatics.com sooner than later, because I think the most common sizes are quickly going to zero.
Yep.
And that's making room for another creation that you have coming up, another shirt, which I think is going to be pretty awesome. The other thing is, check out that little tank right there. Oh, that's hard to bend my arm that way. Yeah, right there. There's a tank right there. Yeah. Joanna just put that on the small scape on her channel. That blurry little background there doesn't do it justice. If you want to see some really interesting design elements, especially when it comes to light and a living Christmas tree, you can check that out at some point if you want to. Again, the small scape. That's your YouTube channel.
Yep.
And it's a short little video, about 4 minutes, but I thought it was pretty interesting. Things that I would never think to do, but you did them.
Yeah, that's what I'm all about.
Yep.
I do things that people would never think to do.
Yeah.
That's my middle name.
We just shake our heads like, wow, you really did that.
Huh.
Put that out there on the internet. So, yes, today, African cichlids. We're going to be talking about them. We're going to be talking about some of the better ones, especially if you're newer to African cichlids, some of the common issues that we face when we're keeping African cichlids. And I know it could be a little bit stressful at times because you've got this fish, and I think what's so cool about them is their color, right? Whether we're talking about Mbuna or Peacocks or Lake Victorians or Lake Tanganyikas, they've got so much color and so much personality. I can't tell you how many times in some of the comment sections when I show the 75-gallon Mbuna tank, people ask, oh, is that saltwater? People who are newer to the hobby, I said, no, these are freshwater fish. And I'm sure some of you have kept them before. People will ask you that as well. So that's the cool part. Of course, as I already kind of sort of mentioned, the bad side is how do you deal with the aggression? And once you start to really learn how to deal with that, keeping cichlids can be a very rewarding experience. In fact, we did that video, the best personalities, fish with the best personalities. And a few African cichlids popped up on there. Yeah, and I really think as a group of fish, those fish are fantastic when it comes to personality. One of the joys in life if you're keeping fish, if you've never done this before, one of the funnest things to do is you take a handful of food and you throw it in an African cichlid tank, especially an Mbuna tank, and those fish all act like they have never seen food before and that you've abused them and you haven't fed them in months. And they do this as many times as you will feed them. And so we feed in the morning and in the evening. And every time I feed these fish, it's one of those things that maybe some of you can relate where you take the food. Now the 75-gallon Mbuna tank's above my head. So what I have to do is I have to take the food and I have to time it because they're already going crazy. And I open the lid, chuck it in, and close it real fast because I know what's going to happen.
You're going to get splashed.
I'm going to get soaking wet. And I used to take offense to that. I would be like, they're doing this on purpose. And they are, but it's just their playful way of getting super excited to eat food. And yes, when you keep certain cichlids, you're going to get soaking wet. The only fish that soaked me more, in fact, tinfoil barbs.
Yeah.
For a while, our tinfoil barbs, I think if fish could laugh, if they had like a way to just visibly and audibly laugh, the tinfoil barbs were laughing at me, because not only would we feed them and they would splash, but they would like flip their whole tail. And I mean, I would look like I just got a 5-gallon bucket of water dumped on me at times. Yeah, so.
And they did that on purpose. Huh?
They absolutely did that on purpose. They, in their own little way, laughed at me every time they did it. So African cichlids can be that way too. So they are really cool fish. Now, the other issue, of course.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
And Jamie already noticed your shirt. Just so you know,
did you call it out?
No,
the movie?
Did. No, he knows.
But I mean, in the live chat, did they mention the movie?
No, but he knows where it's from.
How do we know he knows where it's from?
He and Jamie. I'm assuming
well,
you're he.
Yeah. First of all,
please correct me. What we said, never forget. It's just really funny. I'm sure he knows that it's Die Hard.
Well, you just told them. I was hoping that they would say it in the chat. You ruined the whole thing. Yeah, it's Die Hard. So anyway, when it comes now, can I continue about the African cichlids?
I'm here to make sure all of the good stuff is not missed.
Okay. Well, you're doing a great
the
job.
Shirt references.
Thank you. Like Merry Christmas, yeah?
Yeah, that's the only thing that shows up. Isn't that funny? You filthy animal.
Now, don't tell them what that's from. See, you were going to do it. You were just going to tell
Riddle
them.
knows where it's from.
All right, let's see if people know what that little saying is from.
My gosh.
We'll see. Now, back to African cichlids. They're beautiful. They've got great personality. The other issue sometimes that can be a little bit confusing for beginners is the feeding aspect of it all. And so we're going to get to that as well. What's so funny?
Debbie already got it. Yep.
Yours?
Home Alone.
Home Alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Home Alone. Yep. Multi-tank addiction. Hey, Trish. Yep. Cheryl. Yep. M&C Aquatic. Okay. Finn Wiggles. Y'all got Home Alone. Okay. Now you know that everybody's on the same page.
But Finn Wiggles is here. Finn Wiggles. Guess what we're doing tomorrow? Hey. So you asked to see a certain tank for the members only video tomorrow, and I'm going to make sure that happens. So you asked, it will happen. The tank.
What tank?
You have to just chill out until I shoot.
I have not seen one single members only video because he says the same thing every single week. You're not a member.
I love doing that. It's just fun. And I'm not going to tell you. Finn Wiggles knows. Don't tell her. Do not tell her what I'm doing tomorrow.
On my video, leave a comment.
So, anyway, African cichlids. Let's talk a little bit about it. So, first thing, if you want to be successful keeping African cichlids, one of the best ways that you can be successful is water parameters. And so, if you have water parameters that are somewhat conducive to African cichlids, you're going to be in a much better position to keep them happy and healthy and safe. Water parameters for African cichlids can differ a little bit depending on where the fish come from. So excluding the West Africans, because the West Africans can have water parameters that are around neutral, maybe slightly acidic, and there's not a lot of them on the market, although we're going to talk about some really cool ones and some ones that are very common a little bit later. But when we're talking about African cichlids for the most part tonight, we're really discussing the 3 rift lakes. That would be Lake Tanganyika, Lake Malawi, and Lake Victoria. And those lakes have a lot in common when it comes to water parameters. Normally, they're going to be in the low to mid 8s. There's going to be high water hardness, high carbonate hardness. And so if you have water, generally speaking, that's around a pH of 7.5 or above. Can you go down to neutral? Yeah. Is that going to be ideal for them? Not really, especially if you want to breed them. But if you've got 7.5 or above, even better if you can get up into the 8s. That would be a better situation.
We have a new member, Clint Walker. Welcome.
Oh, Clint, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. If you can get into the 8s, that would be ideal. Water hardness, especially KH, if you can start approaching 150 to 200 parts per million, or maybe even a little bit higher, you're going to be in pretty good shape there. Water temperature is tropical fish water parameters, usually in the upper 70s.
John, I'm sorry, this is important. John from KG Tropicals, yes, Angels with Dirty Souls. Yes, that's actually technically where the quote is from. It's from the movie that Kevin is watching while eating ice cream.
That's true. Yeah,
Okay,
that's a good point. All right.
Thanks for keeping it
He
real.
went down a couple levels there, KG Tropicals. He's
I'm watching it.
yeah, keeping us honest over here.
Yes, you are a nerd.
Okay. Now, so we've got the water parameters. The next thing is, and I think when it comes to decorations, when you've got an African cichlid tank, this can be somewhat easy. It's not like we're dealing with these really advanced aquascapes with lots of live plants, because a lot of your African cichlids are going to destroy live plants anyway. The exception being, if you really wanted to do live plants. I get this question a lot. Well, I want to do live plants, but I also really like African cichlids. If that's the case, maybe start thinking about Lake Tanganyikan cichlids. All right, so those African cichlids, a lot of times they don't eat the plants. Now, some of them will dig, and so you have to deal with that issue, but at least in terms of destroying your plants and eating them, the Lake Tanganyikan cichlids won't do that as much. But the Lake Malawis and the Lake Victorians, they do tend to dig a lot more. They're going to eat your plants. I haven't found anything in a tank where the live plants don't wind up just being some kind of a salad. And that goes for hornwort, anubias, jungle balm. Now, some of you have been successful doing that. And I know I see videos and stuff. People are like, yeah, I've kept some plants and some Mbuna cichlids or peacocks. For me, everything I put in there, they just eat. So the nice thing then is when it comes to the African cichlids, sand usually is the way to go. Rock work is usually a very good thing to have. I had some questions recently. You just did that tank with the Cyprichromis, the jumbo leptosoma that we did earlier this week. And we put a piece of wood in there. And by the way, that vote is split 50-50.
Is it really? Yeah.
Half the people are like, nope, wood does not belong in that tank.
Plants too.
And
it's split.
Other people are like, yeah, let's keep the wood. But one of the questions that was in the comments section was, take the wood out because it's going to lower the pH in your Lake Tanganyikan fish with like a higher pH. Now, that's something we've addressed in a video before.
Right.
That doesn't happen to us. And the reason it doesn't happen, and I actually showed it with a really large piece of driftwood in a 20-gallon. I mean, that piece of driftwood we have in that 20-gallon takes up like half the tank. And it had no impact on our pH. And the reason for that is our carbonate hardness is high enough where it's buffering the pH and keeping it stable. So a smaller piece of wood, probably if your KH is high enough, isn't going to impact your water parameters as much as you might think. So the decorations then are easy. Sand, rocks, roll with it. It's relatively simple. All right. What's so funny?
John, you're a jerk. He keeps stopping. I said that Kevin was eating ice cream. So what does John say? Eating ice cream and watching rubbish. Because that's the actual line.
That's right.
So anyways, John.
And then he's going to go to the store and get some milk, eggs, and fabric softener.
You got it, right?
Yeah.
And FYI, Chad also said yippee-ki-yay. So
he didn't use the rest of the thing.
No, he just said yippee-ki-yay.
Good job, Chad. All right. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Mary Page.
All right.
Hey.
Oh, awesome. Hello. Okay, so when we're looking at these African cichlids, then where are our easiest fish? One, I think in some ways, if I were to rate them from easy to most difficult, at least from my personal experience, a lot of the Lake Tanganyikan fish, again, provided that you have a well-cycled tank, provided that you're matching the water parameters. All right, now I'm talking more about the aggression levels, the personality. I found a lot of the Lake Tanganyikans to be relatively easy to deal with in terms of aggression, provided that you have the things that they need and the right size tank. So for instance, shell dwellers, especially the Maltese and Similis, they generally form larger colonies. They don't really eat each other's fry. And so that could be a really that's a good gateway cichlid.
Yeah.
You don't need a super large tank, maybe 20 long or greater, and that's a really great way to get into keeping cichlids. The Cyprichromis from Lake Tanganyika are open water. They tend not to be overly aggressive. We've had 3 or 4 different species in our fish room at this point, and they are relatively mellow. Even Frontosa, in a large enough tank, when you get a colony of those, they're big and they look sort of aggressive, but they're not as aggressive as you might think. A lot of the rock-dwelling cichlids, so like Julidochromis or Neolamprologus lelupi, I find those rock dwellers, as long as you give them enough rocks in a nice setup where you've got maybe a 3-foot tank or a 4-foot tank. We have some in a 20 long, and for the most part, they're pretty chill. They don't really mess with one another all that much. So that might be a good option. If you're like, okay, the downside with the Lake Tanganyikans, if we're being honest, is they don't have the color that some of the Mbunas or the Lake Victorians or your Peacocks have. So they tend to be more, they've got some iridescence to them, maybe more silvery and brown, but just really kind of pearly looking. So that's kind of nice. Some of them, like the Lailupai, get a pretty orange, or the Ornatus get like yellow and black stripes. That can be nice. But and the Frontosa, of course, have the nice blue and black stripes. But other than those, yeah, you're right. They're going to be a little bit more muted in their color. So if we want to, like, okay, that's great, but I want to step up my game a little bit. Yes, you can consider the West Africans. So like your Crebensis, that's a very common fish. And with the West Africans, you don't need that harder water. You don't need that higher pH in most cases, because the West Africans aren't coming from the Great Lakes. They're coming from the river systems, which would more closely match what you would call, I guess, average water parameters. So, like I said, the Crebensis. What else? The Nanochromis. We have Nanochromis splendens in our fish room. That would be a really good option. The buffalo heads, I think, are another option that are from West Africa. Those are kind of cool. Now, if you want even more color, I think perhaps the next easiest thing, now we're looking at the Mbuna. And I know this is shocking for some people, because like, Mbuna, I heard the horror stories about them. Aren't they the meanest fish on the face of the earth? Actually, no. I found the Mbuna cichlids, when forming a tank, a community, to be one of the easier ones to keep. So we have a 75-gallon filled with Mbuna cichlids. The key is making sure of a couple things. One, their personalities match. There are really, really aggressive Mbuna, and then there are Mbuna that are less aggressive. I think where people get into trouble is they try to mix the less aggressive ones. So let me give you some examples. Less aggressive Mbuna are like your yellow labs, your Pseudotropheus acei, your rusty cichlids. What else? I'm missing a really obvious one that I normally... Pseudotropheus solosi. I think of those as being more mellow. They don't have that I'm going to destroy everything in the tank sort of mean streak in them. But you never know with cichlids. Sometimes they absolutely will be a little bit rough on one another. But then you've got the other side of the Mbuna, where you've got most of the Melanochromis. So like the Auratus, that's probably like the archetypical sort of mean, aggressive fish. And people get these Auratus, especially because you can find them at PetSmart and Petco, and they're really cool looking when they're young. They've got yellow and black stripes, and like, oh, these are so pretty. And then two things happen. One, the males get like blackish purple, and they don't look nearly as pretty as they do when you first get them. And then two, they do start to run the tank. So the Auratus are extremely aggressive. Bumblebee cichlids are very, very aggressive. Demasoni can be very aggressive. The Kenii are probably somewhere stuck in the middle, as well as the red zebras. They can go either way depending on the setup. So the key is keep either the more mellow Mbuna or the more aggressive Mbuna, and maybe not mix them as much. Now, I say that, and we've mixed them. With the exception of the Auratus and the Demasoni, we don't mix those. But right now we've got bumblebees mixed with our yellow labs, and Kenii are in there, and red zebras, and Johanni, which is another one that gets a bad rap, with acei and rusties. But that brings me to my second point. When you want to have success with Mbuna, and really Lake Malawi African cichlids in general, and that is that overstocking. And that we'll get comments on that in our videos from time to time from people who don't normally keep cichlids. And the question is, why do you have so many fish in that tank? That's so cruel. And the reason for that with both of those fish, with the Mbuna, in a 75-gallon, I think we're probably somewhere around 25 to 30 close to full-grown fish, with the exception of some yellow labs that we just added. But that's what you do, and we don't have problems. We don't have any fish hanging in a corner. We don't have any fish torn apart. We don't have fish destroying other fish. And so that's helped quite a bit. Now, that does mean you're going to have more water changes, larger water changes, potentially more filtration for the biological side of things. That's why on our 75-gallon, we have 2 sponge filters, and we have a hang-on back filter that's just trying to deal with all of that heavy bioload from the feeding twice a day and all that kind of thing. I think probably the worst possible cichlid setup for beginners, for someone who's never kept cichlids before. I'm not saying it's impossible, but probably the one that's a little bit harder to do, and that is the Peacock Cichlids, the Peacocks and Haps. And the reason for that is not that they're necessarily any more aggressive than the Mbuna. The problem is they get larger. Many of them get a lot larger. And so you still want to try to achieve that overstocking, but now you've got to try to achieve that in a larger tank. And I think where people run into problems is they want Peacock Cichlids. They see things like Eureka Reds or the Capatochromis or the Placidochromis. Like, oh my gosh, these fish have so much awesome color. And then they want to keep them together, but they've only got a 55-gallon tank or a 40 breeder or maybe even a 75. And they get, let's say, 50% males and 50% females, or even in an all-male tank, they start having aggression issues. And the bigger issue, one of the things that I found especially true with the peacocks and the haps, the more similar the males look, the more they're going to fight. That is just something over, I don't know, 30 years, 40 years of, 35 years for sure of keeping cichlids. I have always found that when you get, let's say, I don't know, for instance, we had a Red Empress cichlid in a 150 with a Lethrinops, and they were both similar. Remember those? They were similar size. They looked similar enough in some of the red hues that they produced where they were constantly vying for king of the tank, where they would lock lips and throw each other around the tank. Never really like an all-out, like, huge war like someone's going to, get annihilated here, but it's something to keep in mind. The other thing that you could consider is when you're keeping the African cichlids together, the other question is, okay, well, how about if I do an all-male tank? Is that going to help? Yes and no. So it helps more, I think, with a peacock tank and a hap tank than it would for Mbuna. Mbuna, I have found that, yes, if you've got them overstocked, yes, your main male is probably going to take the prime real estate in that tank, and then he's going to try to mate with the females. But once they're holding, the females ignore them, and then that problem tends to get alleviated a little bit. The bigger issue is in the peacock tanks, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, what happens is a lot of people, to save some money, they'll buy 6, 8, 10 peacock fish, cichlids, throw them in a tank, and then realize, okay, I've got 3 males and 3 females. There's 2 issues that arise. One, and I did that for multiple species. The 2 issues are, one, your females are not going to be colorful. They're in the peacock side of things. They're going to be either silver or they're going to be brown. So that's not desirable for some. And then the second thing is you can have the potential for hybridization. I have found the hybridization for peacocks, the potential is much, much higher for peacocks compared to Mbuna. All those fish that I mentioned in our 75-gallon Mbuna tank, not once have they ever hybridized. Not once. They tend to stick with their own. Peacocks are a different story. Right now, I have some white knight Alis in a 55-gallon. Did you know that we accidentally left one Eureka Red female in that tank? You know what she's doing right now?
Oh, no, what?
Mouthful of fry. I have no idea. So the fish that are in there are Psiloci, rusty cichlids, and the white knight Alis, and this one random Eureka Red. I'm assuming that she mated with one of the electric or the white knight Alis. I'm tempted to see what happens with that, but I don't want to, because what will wind up happening is we'll have to call, and I don't want to purposely create fish that are going to be, that I know might not be a thing, and plus the hybridization aspect of it. So if you're new and you're thinking about cichlids, I think the bottom line is this: if you're new and thinking about cichlids, the peacocks can be really cool. I highly recommend a very minimum of a 75. So we've got a 75 right now. And of course I say all these things, and if you look at our 75-gallon peacock tank, it's a complete wreck. It goes against everything I just said. I've got OBs, males, Red Empress, Eureka Reds, Dragon Bloods. Those are all males, all mixed in, relatively doing okay. I have got Mbenji, Eureka Red, Red Empress, and a few other types of females in there. Oh, and by the way, there's also a female Midas cichlid. It's working. Highly recommend not doing that, but it's working okay right now. So if you're new to cichlids and you want to try to lessen that aggression, you could think about those. Now, the one I left out, Lake Victorians. I don't know. This has just been my personal experience. I have found the Lake Victorians to be some of the more aggressive cichlids. Lake Victorian fish in general are super awesome. So remember, like the species 44 we had? One of my favorite Lake Victorians, species 44. Look it up. It's an amazing fish. We did a species profile on the species 35 tomato hap, so Haplochromis. Obliquidans. I mentioned this in probably a previous live stream, but one of the few times where I bought a bag of fish that were almost adults, like older juveniles. I got like 6 or 8 of them, maybe more, I don't remember now. put them in the 75 gallon, and I watched those obliquitans, Lake Victorian cichlids, and they just picked each other off one by one, and it was like so fast. So I have found that with the Lake Victorians, they actually do really well with Mbuna cichlids. And I know for the purists out there, they're like, you just mixed lakes. I did.
Yeah, you
and
do
it
that.
was fine. I do that sometimes. Yeah. So, the Lake Victorians, they basically, somebody once said, the Lake Victorian fish look like somebody ate a bunch of Skittles and then spit them out on top of a fish, and that's what you get. But I find them to be extremely pretty fish. So,
do you know anything about Lake Turkana?
I don't. I just saw that pop up, and no. So, is that like one of the? I think that's one of Kim. That's one of those. By the way, hello, Kim. I think that's one of the smaller satellite lakes, but I'm not familiar with the fish that are coming out of there. I think that's what it is. So, yeah. So that's kind of the good, the bad, and the beautiful about African cichlids. The other last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll start taking some questions, is feeding. A lot of times people ask, can you mix the cichlids from different lakes? I've always said it's not the water parameters as much for me, especially when it comes to, like, I know the horrible thing, like the South American, Central American, oh my gosh, can you mix those with Africans? We've done videos on it. That is a conversation for another time. But when I'm looking at mixing fish, one of the things that I'm most concerned about is their diet. And so can you mix something like Lake Tanganyikans with Malawi cichlids? Sure. Water parameters wise, it's fine. I've done it before, and the aggression, they basically ignore one another because they look different. I mean, I've had Brichardi and Juliochromis and even Caudopunctatus in with mellow Mbuna like Yellow Labs and Pseudotropheus acei and those types of fish, and even in with some haps, and they all ignored one another. But the issue really is, okay, well, your Mbuna don't really want high protein diet. Your Lake Tanganyikans will be fine with it. I mean, I wouldn't just load them up on bloodworms every day, but if they get the occasional bloodworms, frozen brine, bug bites, they like that kind of stuff, where you do that with your Mbuna and now you start having problems. So, all right, questions. Let's do it. Have you seen anything that's...
I don't know, but John knows why you guys fight so much now.
What?
From KG Tropicals, he knows why you guys fight so much.
Why do we fight so much?
Because you look alike.
Me and John fight a lot?
Yeah, that's what John said. It's a joke. Get it? Because fish fight when they look alike. It was a fish joke.
It took a minute. I'm a little slow. Yeah. Critter Mom. Not trying to breed, but every once in a while, a baby appears in the tank. Never see the fry though. Aww. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. That happens in pretty much every cichlid tank that we have, especially the Mbuna tanks, where and they're so cute, right? All of a sudden,
they are.
Our red zebra cichlids used to do that more in the Mbuna tank than a lot of the other Mbunas. Like, I don't know what it is specifically about them, but the really tiny ones would go and hide in all the crevices of the rocks, and all of a sudden you'd see like this little 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch fish, and he'd come out and get some food and then go right back into the rocks, and some of them survive. A lot of times people ask me, hey, you know what? Oh my gosh, I've got this female. She's holding again. I can't take 30 more of this particular species. I can't even move the ones I've got. And what I often say is, don't remove the eggs. Don't remove the mom. And when she spits those fry into the tank, they're not going to survive there. It's going to become fish food. So I know that maybe for some people it's like, oh, that's sad. Well, yes, it is. The only alternative is to remove the females and just separate the males and the females. But outside of that, usually if you've got Mbuna or a lot of the African cichlids in a community setting with other African cichlids, if you don't remove them, the likelihood that the fry survive is reduced. Now, if you've got a lot of hiding places, that may not be the case. So, all right, what else? Okay, I just got here. So Eric says, I just got here. What would happen if I put only peacocks in a 30-gallon? So we kind of sort of addressed this probably before you got here. I would say probably don't do that. And the reason for that is, again, my thing with the peacocks and the haps is 75-gallon. Now, I should preface this by saying if I had a breeding group like one male and 3 or 4 females, could I put them in a 40 breeder? Absolutely. Done it without any issues whatsoever. But if we're looking at what most people are looking at, and that is, hey, I want a really pretty tank, that's for the peacocks. I would highly prefer that 75-gallon or greater to really get those fish to look their best. In fact, I saw Kim is in the chat. She's got some absolutely fantastically done. I think she's got a 125 or 135 that is set up, or maybe it's a 150. Sorry, Kim. It's a 150, and she's really got that tank dialed in with some awesome all-male peacocks. Okay, Jonathan, feeding them algae wafers and micro pellets. They seem to like it. Any suggestions? So it depends on what they are. If you're talking about African cichlids, especially the Mbuna or the peacocks, yeah. Algae wafers are fantastic, especially for the Mbuna. We try to do that at least, I don't know, at least a few times a week, if not more. We'll just take a handful of algae wafers and they'll snack on those things. The peacocks eat them not as aggressively. They do eat them, like at least they go missing. So I'm assuming they eat them. I don't stand there and watch them eat because that's the downside. When you've got that many tanks, I don't get to just sit there and like feed and then just sit there and watch them consume all the food.
That'd take you all day.
It's a trade-off. And then sometimes I'll catch myself doing it, and then the feeding that would normally take, I think it's probably like a 20-25 minute process to feed all of our fish.
Yep.
If I start catching myself watching a lot of them eat, then I'm down there for like an hour or so, which is sometimes really awesome. But yeah. So, okay. Let's see here. Danny, have you guys ever had a problem with cichlid bloat? Honestly, no. And I don't mean that to sound like, look at us, I'm an expert, and I don't deal with the cichlid bloat. That's not, and I don't mean it to sound that way, but I just haven't. Usually it's a bacterial thing, and it often stems from the diet. So because I haven't dealt with it, and I know there's things. Okay, well you can use try to feed them peas, and you can use the Epsom salts, antibiotics, provided that they can get into the body, especially if the fish are still eating. So often with the internal stuff, if the fish are still eating and you can feed them medicated, metronidazole flakes or something like that, that tends to be very helpful. Okay, Hardy, if maintenance is kept up, can you actually overstock the Mbunas if you keep one male to each species? With each species, like all the species in the world?
If you keep one male.
Because there's a lot of species of Mbuna, like a lot.
Well, I don't.
But I know that. Ask it again. I don't quite understand. So just ask it again, and then I'll try to do a better job.
Can you keep bristlenose with Mbuna?
That's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the interesting things that we have going on in our fish rooms, I think we have Bristlenose Plecos. They're like my go-to. I know some people don't like them.
I think they're adorable.
I love them.
Except
I'm
the ones
pretty sure.
Things coming off the big ones. No.
Hold on. Time out.
Little ones are kind of cute though.
I absolutely love them. I think they're adorable, except for the ones that have the things coming out of their face.
Well, they're like when they get like really big. I like the little tiny baby plecos. They're so cute.
Don't tell her.
Or like the
Bristlenose Plecos means that they're going to get the things. Females don't. The males do. But to answer your question, yes, I have kept Bristlenose Plecos and do keep Bristlenose Plecos in with every tank that we have for the most part, unless the tank is too small. So if it's less than 10 gallons, no. If it's even 10 gallons or less, probably not. But that's my Mbuna. That's my Peacocks. That's been my Cichlids, all of those. The key is, I think, one, give them places to hide, because we have rock work in all of our cichlid tanks, and that makes things a lot easier. So I don't see the bristlenose as much as I do in other tanks. Right? So if I've got more of a community tank, the bristlenose are out there a little bit more often. If it's the Mbuna tank or the Peacock tanks, they tend to be a little bit more reclusive. They'll come out, especially around feeding time. And I know they're out all night because we don't scrape a lot of algae in our fish room, so something's got to be keeping the glass clean, and it's the bristlenose. So I've done it. The problem I think a lot of people will have is if they've got a tank that's got full-grown Mbuna, full-grown Peacocks, and then they try to add the bristlenose, and if the bristlenose are on the smaller side, that can become a problem. So it's all about when you add the fish. Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much for the super chat. My Mbuna babies. Lav and Kenny I together in a 10-gallon, feeding them algae wafers and micro pellets. Is that okay? Also, when do I move them? So, Okay, so you've got lab and Kenyi together. So you had a couple different holding females, I'm assuming. You put them all in a 10-gallon together, which is, it's fine. Especially when they're younger, they tend to really be tolerant of one another. And I have found when you keep them together from the time that they are born, especially as juveniles, they tend to be a lot less aggressive towards one another because they figure things out earlier in life. They figure out who's the dominant male and they learn that hierarchy. So your question is, algae wafers and micro pellets, yes, I think they're fine. If the micro pellets, of course, you don't want a super high protein content. We have really good luck doing live baby brine when they're very, very young. And then we just switch them over. We'll switch them over to the like the cichlid pellets, or the other one too is like kelp wafers or kelp flakes. So I know, like, we're sponsored by Northfin, and they have a kelp flake that we really like, and I'll feed that to our Mbuna. They absolutely love it. But yeah, what you're doing is good. When do you need to move them? I would say the question there isn't even going to be the aggression. The question is going to be more the size. And so usually by the time they're, and it depends on how many you have, right? So in a typical spawn, you're getting, let's say 30, right? So if you had 30 yellow labs and 30 Kenyi, that's 60 fish in a 10 gallon. So if you've got, let's just say between 30 and 60 offspring in that 10 gallon, I would probably start thinking about separating the Kenyi from the yellow labs just to kind of reduce that bioload at about 3/4 of an inch maybe, just so that it's more of a bioload thing than it is an aggression thing, because I think they're going to mostly get along. So Finn Wiggles, thank you so much for the super chat. Such a fan of your channel. I'm willing to watch a live stream on cichlids. Black. Hats off to the elf in the green shirt for the amazing Christmas tree.
That's me. Somebody finally called me an elf. Yay.
Oh, boy.
I really am an elf. Thank you, Finn Wiggles.
Glad you're here, man. Thank you for being here. How deep? Okay, here we go.
If I gotta sit here, so do you. No, I'm just kidding. That's
all
me,
right.
John. Yeah.
Just go away. Hold on. I was going to. I did. That was what I was about to read before you insulted me on that. This is becoming a weekly thing.
It's like a regular video. Why should it be any different?
Cry. Okay. If maintenance is kept up, can you overstock an already... Oh, okay. I got you now. Can you overstock an already overstocked Mbuna tank if you keep 1 male to 5 females for a few different mellow species? Yeah, I mean, you just want to be careful that you don't get to the point where there's so many fish in there that now they're getting super stressed out, and it's a little bit easier for disease to transfer from one fish to another. So if you are keeping up with the water changes, I mean, for us, and I've said this a million times, our goal is the 20 parts per million nitrate. Not that that's a magic number, like, oh my gosh, I got up to 30. Are my fish going to be okay? Yeah, they're going to be fine. So, but I use that 20 parts per million just to kind of gauge my water change schedule and my volumes. So if you're doing that, that's probably going to keep them healthier longer. The male to female ratio 1 to 5 that's actually really good. The problem is with a lot of the Mbuna, especially, the males and the females look so similar that you don't realize what your ratios are until they've gotten to be subadults, and then you're like, oh. And it never fails. And if you look back at some of the old videos I have, like the Psiloci, I would get young Psiloci, and all of a sudden I'm like, I got 4 males and 2 females in a 40 breeder. Never had an issue because I got them when they were really tiny, and they just grew up and kind of worked out their things, but they were perfectly fine. But yeah, you could do that. You just want to be careful and make sure that you're keeping up with the maintenance so that nobody winds up getting sick. All right.
It's okay if you butcher my name.
Okay, hold on.
All right, wait. We're going to try.
Josu? I'm going to go. You got to tell me, though. You got to phonetically spell it out down there.
Josu.
Josu. That's what I'm going with. And then you're going to correct us because, and thank you, by the way, for the super chat.
Thank you.
It's okay if you butcher my name, LOL. Anyways, I have a breeding group of Peacock Cichlids, 1 male, 3 females, and a 29. Would they be fine, or should I upgrade? I would upgrade eventually, only because they're probably going to want a little bit more space as they grow. They're going to want a lot more space. So with that group, I think you could do it easily in a 40 breeder or a 33 long, any type of 4-foot tank. So there's options out there. And even I think at this point, a 55-gallon kit, if you have the space, is going to be cheaper than a 40 breeder. So
Hosway?
Oh
Hosway?
my gosh. Yeah, we were not even close on that one. I'm sorry. Hosway.
Way to go.
I'm really bad with names. I forget. I'm at a point in my life now where I forget my own name if I don't remind myself of who I am. That's a joke. So, yeah, I would try to move them out of that 29 eventually if you could. Okay, Kevin. Just started.
Perfect name, Kevin.
All right, just started my first Mbuna tank. I have a mix of Yellow Labs, Rusties, Johnson, which I'm probably thinking it was spell check, supposed to be Johanny, Dubosai, Snow Whites, Parrots, and a yellow and black aggressive ones. Totaling 25 fish. Am I in trouble? Maybe.
Am I in trouble?
You're in big trouble. Go to your room. I think your Yellow Labs and your Rusties, your Rusties are going to be okay. I think there's a chance that your Johanny could still work in there. At least for us, it's work. And again, part of this depends on the size tank, which I don't know. Ours, again, are in a 75-gallon. Du Bois are, I'm assuming you're talking about the Tropheus. I had them mixed, and they ignored one another. The diets are somewhat the same. The purists are going to say, hey, the Tropheus are Lake Tanganyikans. They should really, when best done, the Tropheus are kept as a big giant colony, which can be a bit of a challenge. And I thought I saw someone mention in the section, the live chat, hey, what about the Tropheus? Yeah, super awesome, but that one can be another one where I will put them kind of up with the Lake Victorians. You really want to have some experience with cichlids before you get a big colony of those. Snow Whites, which I'm assuming might be the White Knight Alis. Parrots. If the parrot is a blood parrot, the ones that generally get big and kind of bulky, that one could be a problem because while aggressive and very boisterous, they can't defend themselves. No. Once the Mbuna get to a size where, like, you know what, I'm pretty much done with you trying to chase me around this tank. The yellow and black aggressive ones, I think, so the yellow and black aggressive ones, most likely if you got them from a local fish store, are one of two things. They're either the Aratus I mentioned, the yellow and black ones would have the horizontal stripes, or the Bumblebee Cichlids where the yellow and black the black is vertical stripes. Those ones, again, the Aratus, yeah, they're probably going to wind up ruling that tank at some point. If they're bumblebees, they're going to get quite large. And the males, they also get kind of a black color, which they'll lose that yellow and black. So the males in both cases will lose that. So, yeah, you're going to have to keep an eye on that one. I'm not going to say that the only one that really stands out where it's going to be a problem is probably that blood parrot. The rest of them, you're just going to have to keep an eye on and make sure that they're okay. Oh, thank you so much. Arctic Dark. That's kind of cool.
Thank you.
Worried. If I water change with FX4 and buckets back in through FX4 and treat each bucket with prime, how long before I damage the bacteria? So if I water change with FX4 and buckets back through the FX4 and treat each bucket with prime, how long do I have to wait? The bacteria doesn't get damaged as quickly as people think. And I'm going to be doing a video about that very soon because it relates to some of the things that we talk about when it comes to even cleaning sponge filters and tap water. There's a concept called contact time. And your municipality, the reason why they chlorinate the water and the concentrations that they do is so that there's ample contact time to destroy the bacteria that would make us sick. Now, in that particular case, I tend not to stress about it. So, like, for instance, when we do water changes, we will typically add the dechlorinator in, because we're doing water changes with like 10 tanks at a time. So we'll go through, drain them, clean the filtration, all that stuff, gravel vac if we need to. And then we'll go through and use like the concentrated stuff like the ACCR from Fritz or something, just drop little bits of that into each tank according to the volume. And then we'll go through and we'll do the tank filling. There are times I've forgotten where I will fill all the tanks and be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to add the dechlorinator. And then I go back in and add it. Not once have I ever had an issue. Now, I'm not saying, hey, you know what, if you do a 90% water change and you forget to add your dechlorinator, it's okay. No, because now your fish are going to be in trouble. But I don't stress too much about that. So if you're thinking, oh, you know what, this process takes me an hour, you know, because it's FX4 and I want to really make sure that everything is okay. If it's an hour, I tend not to worry about it if it's been 10, 15, 20 minutes, because now you're dealing directly with the media. But as soon as you can get in there, probably the better. But it's not something I really stress about.
Critter Mom wanted to know, is there an age that cichlids are considered fully grown, or is it different depending on the variety?
That's a great question.
That's a very good question.
Here's an interesting thing about almost all fish. They never stop growing. The older they get, the larger they grow. So it's not like a human being where it's like, yep, you know, I stopped growing at 18 or 20 years old and I was 6'4" and that's what I am. I wish. But minus like we don't have to talk about that. But with fish, they just keep growing. Now, when you're talking about adult size, it depends on the fish. Like a lot of the Lake Tanganyika fish grow very slowly. For instance, we've got Frontosa, and I bought that fish, and it was probably, and it's in a 150. Maybe it was 3 inches. It's been 4 or 5 years, and the thing is maybe 6 or 7 inches. A lot of the Lake Tanganyikans grow fairly slow. The Mbuna tend to grow very, very quickly, and so you can have Mbuna cichlids that are full size, usually within a year or so. You know, same thing with the Lake Victorians. They grow very quickly. The West Africans grow very quickly. South and Central Americans usually grow extremely fast. So it really depends on the fish. Like I said, the Lake Tanganyikans, you might be looking at a longer period of time, though.
Noelle was wondering whose shirt is. She was just having a hard time. Whose shirt is cooler? You know, I'm thinking mine. But I did get this for him last Christmas.
You did. And I've got more coming, although next week, I'm not looking forward to this. No, next week I have to switch to sweaters.
I know. I was going to say. I was thinking.
That's
how are you
great.
Going to crack open the window or something?
I don't. Yeah, I probably will have to, because that's great. But in this room, with the computer, the lights, all the electronics, I've got the heating vent. Right now it's on my foot, blowing hot air on my foot. So if you see me like profusely sweating in the next couple weeks, it's because I wanted to keep the theme of wearing Christmas-themed clothes. But now I have to switch from T-shirts to sweaters to make it unique. Yeah. Micah, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it.
Look
thank
at
you.
The little guy moving. That's so cute. Is that like a pear? Oh, it's like a pear.
It is.
Oh,
so hold on. Cute. Right below that, MNC Aquatics. Any experience with Tropheus duboisii? Yes. Not a lot. So I don't keep the Tropheus as much. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I'm very strange in some ways where there are certain cichlids where I'll mix like Mbuna and Peacocks and not think much about it, and the purists will be like, can't believe you did that. I'm like, well, I did. I've even mixed, like I said, I've even mixed Lake Tanganyika and Lake Malawi. But then there are the certain fish where I don't want to mix them. Like my shell dwellers, I won't mix. Most of my Lake Tanganyikans, I try not to mix. The Tropheus is one where if I were going to keep them, I would keep them as just a group, knowing that I'm going to need a large tank. Ideally, for me, if I was doing it, I think I'd like something. That's a fish where I actually think a taller tank can be cool sometimes with a lot of rock work, especially if you got like a 3D background, like a 90-gallon, even better, a 125. And once you start getting into those larger tanks, they really start to show their personalities, because they do settle things, at least in my experience, a little bit more aggressively than some of the other fish do. The other thing, too, is the diet. You may have heard, okay, with the Tropheus, they can't have a high-protein diet. That's mostly true, and I tend to stick with that. I think if you feed them small amounts of protein very slowly, increase that protein feeding a little bit over periods of time, the normal flora, the microbes they have in their gut start to change enough where they can deal with it. But those are my two pieces of advice. A larger tank is better. Lots of rocks, big colony of the same species, low protein diet, high veggies.
Our awesome moderators, Myrtle had a great idea.
Yeah.
He wants to see who
can sweat the most.
No, uglier.
Sorry.
Uglier Christmas sweater next week.
Oh, I've got. Oh no, that's.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
yes,
I would have to.
I'm going to win that one.
Right now.
I am absolutely going to win that one, because I have one. And I will wear them like when normally, it stinks because now I can't wear my Christmas sweaters to school because we're teaching from home. But I have one that I wear. And my students, because some of my students will be very honest with me by the end of the semester, right? I mean, it's over and like, Professor Adams, it's not just that sweater is ugly. It doesn't match your skin complexion at all. It's horrible. Please don't wear that again. And I laugh because I know that there are certain clothes, like maybe some of you can relate. There are certain colors that if I wore them,
you'd be like,
it's horrifying. Orange. I cannot wear orange. Like one time,
you did that one time. It was not good.
So in my younger years, I would wear these shirts and we'd go out to the, clubs or whatever. And I found this one. Yeah, that's my dance. That's why I was always single. But I went to like Nordstrom, right? And I'm going to get my club shirt, my new club shirt. I put on this orange shirt. And you know how they have people who work there and they're supposed to tell you, oh, that looks great. Yeah, because they're going to sell you clothes. I walk out of the dressing room with this orange shirt on and the girl looked at me and she's like, no. That's all she said. I'm like, that's what I thought. So don't worry. Next week.
That's this color.
I honestly think if I wear that sweater, I'm going to have to remove it like after 10 minutes because people are going to be like, I can't watch this with him wearing that ugly
I really
thing.
can't wear this particular color green, but it's Christmas, so it doesn't really matter. It's just like what it says.
Yeah, it is embarrassing, but it's okay.
Don't worry, Mary Page.
I had a great question, and then, Whips World, thank you so much for the super chat.
Thank you.
Although not a true African cichlid, have you played with Starry Night in your fish keeping adventures? That might be close to AC that I get. African cichlids. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about the polleni. No, I have not kept them. I've got some friends who keep them. I've got lots of friends in the clubs that keep them. The polleni and the bleaker eye, which are very, very similar. Madagascar cichlids, first of all. The Madagascars, as a group, can be very, very aggressive. And so the reason why I don't keep them is to do it right for me, I want them in a large tank. And the largest tanks that we have, we've got a 150 and then we've got 4 125s. I don't think that's large enough to do them justice. Like my buddy Tim, I'll go to his house sometimes and he's got a larger fish room or larger tanks than I do. And he's got some Madagascar cichlids and he can make that work because he's got the 210s and the 240s and that kind of thing. And some of the other friends that I have that have got those 8-foot tanks and they look absolutely amazing. The issue is, man, are they aggressive. And so that's always been my hesitation. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it the right way. Fin Wiggles, elf hats would be cool for next week.
I have one.
Don't tell her stuff like that because now I'm going to have to wear this thing.
I just remembered something. I wonder if I still have it.
No.
When I first started like my job, they would dress up for Halloween, and I wanted to be an elf. I just remember this. And my sister, I actually have a twin sister. She made me an elf costume to wear, and it has a hat and the boots and everything. I was the coolest elf. I wonder where that is.
I don't know, but we can leave it lost. Ange
let it lie. Just let it lie. It's already out there.
Okay.
Anybody know that? Probably not. Okay.
I don't even know that. Ange
no,
S.
You wouldn't.
I have a pair of platinum oh, that sounds cool. Platinum dragon blood peacocks.
Wow.
Platinum dragon bloods. So I'm assuming it's a dragon blood. Oh, it's got more of a white color to it. It's not something I've seen around here. How long will it take for them to grow out? I think the dragon bloods grow pretty fast. I mean, we've bred, like the regular ones, we've bred 1 billion of those things. Actually, we have dragon bloods that have hybridized with red empress, and that's where we get our OBs from. And all of those fish, the red empress, the dragon bloods, and the OBs all grow very, very quickly. So it's probably not going to take you, provided that they're in the proper size tank. So if you've got them, the dragon bloods, in let's say a 4-foot tank or larger, you're going to probably see them pretty close to that 6-inch mark probably within a year or so, I would say. So just be a little bit patient, maybe sooner. Okay, let's see here. Brian asks, how do I breed my Mbuna? Well, I have found Mbuna to be relatively easy. Again, you got to have the right water parameters. So if you have got that pH close to an 8 and the water hardness somewhere around that 170 to 200 parts per million or 10 to 12 degrees for the KH, give them time. Obviously, you need to have a male and a female. And the other thing is give them some rock work, someplace where the male can say, okay, this is where I'm going to dig my little pit. And what I found with all my Mbuna is they especially like to dig out those pits around the rocks, which is, we've talked about this before. Make sure your rocks in an Mbuna tank are against the glass, not stacked up on sand, because they're going to dig right around those rocks. And if there's 1.5 inches of sand and then they start to make that whole pile unstable, it's all coming down. So the big thing is, the other thing is they are going to need space to call their own. And so that's why I say, the tank needs to be the right size. Because what I found in my Mbuna tank is we had the Kenii male had at one point 3 or 4 females. And he basically commandeered the center part of the tank. With the overstocking thing that we've got going on, it can be very difficult for the male and the female to do the mating process and not have a bunch of other fish interrupting and getting into, and then he's spending all his time chasing fish away, and then she's trying to chase fish away. So if you really want your Mbuna to breed, that's like a thing you want to do, sometimes the best thing to do is have your male with 3 or 4 females of the same species, give them their own tank, and then it's pretty much, as long as your water parameters are okay, it's almost a guarantee. If you've got them in that situation where they're highly overstocked, and now you've got your subdominant males, maybe like for us, it was our red zebras or our Pseudotropheus acei, they can't breed in the area they want to breed, so now they're off on the side, and they've got, all, like I said, all the other fish, so that can be an issue. So if you really wanted to breed, male, females, give them their own take and let them do their thing.
Just so you know, Noel got my quote.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. Not that you know it.
Hey, I never underestimate the people who are watching our live stream.
SC, what are your guys' top 3 foods for smaller fish?
For smaller fish, tetras and guppies, he says. Top one, without a doubt, live baby brine. For tetras and guppies, they go insane. And you would think that the live baby brine would be far too small for them to take an interest in. But when we are breeding certain strains of guppies, the adult fish go every bit as crazy for the live baby brine as the babies do. And the tetras do too. I mean, they love it. They'll go, a lot of times, like your standard tropical fish, we talked about the Mbuna just going crazy eating, and it's really exciting. A lot of times, most tropical non-cichlid fish don't do that. But with live baby brine, the guppies, the tetras do that. Besides that, because not everybody wants to hatch that, usually crushed flake, I try to not necessarily pulverize, but smaller flakes. I don't. Guppies will sometimes like the smaller, like the 1 millimeter sinking pellets, because they'll eat off the gravel. Tetras don't do that, so that won't work for them. What else? What else do we like to feed the smaller fish? I mean, I think that's really about it in terms of stuff that's simple. Well, I mean, live baby brine's not simple, but they love it so much, you just have to do it. Okay, the famous Aquarius says, I have yellow labs breeding like crazy. I have to move them to a 75 gallon. Yeah, that definitely happens. You can get overrun with yellow labs in a hurry, but they're such cool fish that it's just fun to watch that colony grow. Let's see here. S1, do Caudopunctatus pack sand in front of shells where there may be eggs? I have seen them dig out sand from around shells and rocks. They don't, so the Caudopunks aren't true shell dwellers like the Similis and the Maltese and the Brevis and the Ocellatus and those types of like real shell dwellers. So very rarely will the Caudopunks, at least from what I've seen, they don't generally lay the eggs in a shell. What they do is they lay the eggs, at least from what I've seen, and I've bred, I think we've got like, just in the last 6 months, probably 5 batches of at least 30. What they do is they tend to go into the rocks, and then they'll build up sand around those rocks. And then once the fry hatch, they do move them out, and often I will find at least some of the fry in those shells, but I have never seen them actually use shells to breed. I leave them in there more so that the fry have a place to kind of hang out. Marty, thank you so much for the super chat.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks for the informational videos you put out each week, learning a lot from you too. Well, thank you so much for watching. It is definitely a fun thing to do. So
yes. All
right, let's see here. Let's go down. All right, so Geek Mashup. Is an Mbuna tank hard to keep? I have 120 high community tank, but I just got a 55 gallon that I am cycling, and do you think it's a good idea? For Mbuna, yes, I think it can be. Again, the big thing is making sure that you manage the aggression. So I recommend, if you haven't kept Mbuna, for a 55 gallon, and you could go back, and we but maybe like a month ago, we did a video on aquascaping a 55 gallon. And in that thumbnail, you're going to see some Pseudotropheus solosi and some ACI, no, not ACI, rusty cichlids are in there with some white knight alis, which are not Mbuna. But if you stay with the less aggressive ones, and so maybe a mix like what I just mentioned, solosi, rusty cichlids, yellow labs, they tend not to get huge. I'd stay away from the ACI in a 55 gallon because the ACI can get 7 or 8 inches. They get really big, some of the bigger Mbuna out there. But if you did something like that, I think it could work in a 55 gallon.
All right. Canadian A. I think some people would like a minimum tank size on African cichlids. That's good. My question earlier, what's the oddest fish you have kept, and any oddballs in the fish room right now?
Okay, so thank you, because actually that was one thing I did want to mention with the tank sizes, and I got away. By the way, Critter Mom, thank you so much.
Thanks, Critter Mom.
Appreciate you being here. Have fun feeding the dogs.
Yeah.
So, tank sizes. For small rock-dwelling and shell-dwelling Lake Tanganyikan fish, so the Maltese, or you're going to go with Juliochromis. If you look up rock-dwelling Lake Tanganyikan cichlids, I think a 20 long can work. I think if you are going with the feather fins from Lake Tanganyika, now you're looking at least a 4-foot tank to really make them happy. Staying on the Lake Tanganyika thing, if you got Frontosa, you probably want, oh boy, I would probably want a 180 if I'm going to keep a group of Frontosa. If you're going with the Mbuna, which we've been talking about, I have successfully kept Mbuna in 40-gallon breeders as a group, as a single species. I have had no problems keeping rusty cichlids in a 33 long, which is a 4-foot long tank. So I would say somewhere in there, either 4 feet long or a 40-gallon breeder. Once you get smaller than that, like the 29s or the 20 longs, it's possible to do it, but it is far from ideal. Same thing with the Lake Victorians. I think the Lake Victorians are another one where 40-gallon breeder or a 4-foot tank is probably, for most people, going to be the minimum where you're going to have most solid success. The Peacocks. The Peacocks, I have been okay with keeping a breeding group in either a 40 breeder or a 55-gallon. If you want an all-male Peacock tank, that's when I like to move to a minimum of a 75-gallon, but even better would be a 6-foot tank. So that's kind of how I approach that. But that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. My question earlier, what's the oddest fish you have kept? It's not a fish necessarily, and I don't want this to be a cop-out. I'll try to think of a fish too, but definitely the thing that we have in the fish room right now that is odd are our Spanish ribbed newts.
They're odd.
And they're odd for so many reasons.
So
they're first of all, they're albino, and I'm pretty certain that I don't think they're blind, but they don't see worth a darn, man. I mean, they kind of wander around, and they're basically the food has to be hitting them in the face, and then they'll take it. Yep. So Spanish ribbed newts are super cool because they're fully aquatic newts, and that's pretty awesome. And I'm probably doing something that most people wouldn't recommend. They're in the 125 with the electric blue acara. Totally ignore them. Mm-hmm. But now I've got some Vieja in there, Synspilum, and I know those fish are going to get bigger and they're going to be a little bit more aggressive. So I'm going to have to figure that situation out because I don't want anybody to get hurt in that tank. But that is probably the thing that I think is the oddest, and I really like to watch them. I'm trying to think, is there...
Gobies?
The gobies, yeah.
Goofy.
Rhinogobius henechuensis, which is a true freshwater goby. We had a big group of them for a long time, and now I think we're down to like 3 males in a 75-gallon with some Gymnogeophagus.
They're very grumpy looking.
Yeah, but also goofy.
They're very goofy and grumpy.
Goofy and grumpy.
Jeez.
Anything else? What do we have?
3 Gs.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else
grumpy
weird.
Gobies.
Oh, here's an interesting side note. It's not weird, but we have a coolie loach that we threw in the 150 a long time ago. This was years ago. I thought it just died. Saw it yesterday. Not yesterday, like last week. It was in the 150, swimming around. I'm like, I haven't seen you in like 2 years. So anyway, the famous Aquarius, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
In a 75-gallon, is it possible to pair yellow labs with angelfish? Any other tank mates do you recommend? Thanks for the great content. I don't think the temperament is going to be your problem, because I'm trying to think if we've ever done that. I don't think I have. And there's the reason I haven't done that is I don't necessarily think that the yellow labs and the angelfish are going to fight, especially if you get them when they're younger. I think the biggest issue you're going to have, there's going to be two issues there. The yellow labs are going to be very aggressive eaters, as will the angelfish when they're younger, but they're also going to be very active. And so the dynamic between the yellow labs and the angelfish in terms of their personality may not be great for the angelfish. As they get older, they might get a little bit stressed out by them. The second issue, and I think this is probably the biggest one, is the feeding. So I always say when I'm thinking about combining fish, often it's the diet that is going to help me determine whether or not I want to keep fish together. Your angelfish are going to love bloodworms. They're going to love the meaty stuff. They're going to love brine shrimp. And your yellow labs are not. And so now you're stuck with this situation where it's like, okay, I really need to try to feed my yellow labs, ideally a food that's, like the cichlid flakes and the kelp flakes and things where it's less protein content. At the same time, your angelfish are like, man, you know what? I could go for some bloodworms right now. And so that's going to be your biggest issue. So that's probably why I wouldn't do it. It's just a diet perspective. Okay. Let's see here. Holy Roman Empire. Can I keep peacocks in a 50-gallon? So the 50-gallon is probably a 4-foot 50. I'm assuming it's probably just a little bit shorter than the 55. I would, if it were me, if I were going to do that, again, I'm looking at a breeding group. I'm looking at a male with females, and that's how I'm approaching it. If I'm trying to fit in multiple males in that tank, most likely, even if they're the same species, it's going to be problematic. That's kind of, at least that's been my experience. Can people do it? It's been done. I just try not to, because I know once they get older and once the dominant male's like, yeah, this is mine, that's where the issue starts. Okay. Brian asks, a non-cichlid question. Can mollies and platies go with, I guess it is a cichlid question. Can mollies and platies go with my cichlids? Water parameters, if we're dealing with African cichlids, the water parameters aren't an issue, obviously. The issue may be, depends on what kind of cichlids. So for instance, I at one point was keeping sailfin mollies with my 33 long, my Lake Tanganyika setup. And the reason I did that wasn't just like, hey, let me mix these very different fish together. It was, I wanted the mollies to eat the green hair algae that was growing in that tank, and they did. They polished it all off. The problem is, when the cichlids started to breed a little bit more in that 33 long, those mollies were starting to get chased away a little bit more aggressively. And I think that would be the case with just about any fish that's going to start to breed. Now, if you're doing all males, platies, no. Platies, they're just they're just not aggressive. The mollies are a little bit more active. I wouldn't do it on purpose, I guess is my final answer. All right, let's see here. Legend Fish Tanks. Hi, I'm not sure if my Caudalpunctatus are breeding. The male and female dug out a spot of sand and stayed together, but now the female chases away the male and she has, oh yes, that's a good sign. That's a very good sign. So yes, she's going to do that. Yes, when they get those darker stripes, that's a territorial thing. They'll do that even if they're not breeding sometimes. But usually when you start seeing that, start looking for fry in a probably inside of a week or two. But that is usually a very good sign. Those dark, and the males will do that too, by the way. The males can get those dark stripes as well, but that is definitely a sign for her telling any other Caudalpunctatus in that tank, this is my area, stay away, I'm serious. I'm not messing around here. Yeah. So good luck. I hope they do breed for you.
Sean has a question.
He does.
55-gallon.
Okay.
Cribs.
Oh, here we go. Jason, I have a 55-gallon with 2 pairs of cribensis, 2, I don't know.
Burritos Groni?
Okay. 1 a Bisher, 5 emerald green cories. Would like to add top and midwater fish. What are your suggestions? 55-gallon, 2 cribs. So they're going to be towards the bottom. The Bisher.
Maybe Gourami?
I think it's Gourami, yeah.
2 pairs Gourami.
5 emerald green
Spell
cories.
check.
So what would I add mid-water to that? The one thing that sticks out there is the Bisher. And the only reason why I'm a little concerned about that is it's going to get bigger. And they're relatively slow eaters. So it's fine right now with what you've got because the cribs are only going to eat so much food. If that is a gourami, I'm assuming the gouramis are a little bit aggressive eaters. You're going to have to try to find something that's not going to eat the food and take a lot of the food away from the Bisher. So maybe the first thing that came to mind with like the top water would be like a hatchet fish, just because they're not super aggressive eaters. I think normally I would say something like rainbows, but I worry the rainbows are going to eat too much of the food for the Bisher. Unless you're kind of hand feeding the Bisher, maybe that's one way to get around it. Even like things like giant Danios are way too fast and aggressive and eat too much. And then you've got to deal, if that is gouramis, you have to deal with that situation. So the hatchet fish definitely are something that I might consider, just because there's nothing there that's going to be really at the top of the water. Possibly maybe some, well, it's a 55-gallon Colombian tetras might be another one that you could potentially look at. Okay, moving on. Oh my gosh, let's do like 3 more questions or so. I didn't realize it was as late as it is. Okay, hold on. NW Canuck. Hey, I tried to get this on the last show. Bad us. Sorry. If you guys could only have 1 tank each of any size, 1 species only from here on out, what would it be? Great. Now you're going to give me a thinking question after I've been talking for an hour. 1 tank, right? 1 tank, 1 species only. Ooh, boy. 1 tank, 1 species. And I have to pick one, right? It's not like, well, I'd like this or this. Man, you really got me on that one.
Do you do Oscars? Do you do Shelleys? Do you do,
I guess I go shell dwellers. But you said 1 tank and you didn't specify a size. So here's my shell dweller tank. I'm going to go Maltese. I want a 10-foot long by 14 inches tall, but I want it to be 2.5 feet wide. And I'm going to throw all kinds of shells and rock work, and I'm just going to watch the whole colony. What do you got? What you got?
Boy, I don't know. That would be really, well, usually I go for betta, but that's, just a tank with 1 betta. Oh, probably a big school of something. Yeah,
you're a schooling.
I want some green neons real bad. A whole lot of them.
All right, so you can go with like green neons and a 6,000-gallon tank.
Yeah, my tank will be like
1 million green neons.
Your tank.
Yeah. Whew. Yeah, that would be something. Okay, let's see here. Jason says 1 species. I got to say the humble tiger barb, my favorite fish by far.
Sure.
Love the social structure. Yeah, tiger barbs are cool. They remind me when I was a kid. That was like one of the most popular fish, like back in the 80s. I think every tank had tiger barbs, and every tank also had guppies that were torn apart because of it. Let's see, Kira, 10-foot betta tank. 10-foot betta tank.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, at that point, with 10 feet of space, well, you know what? At 10 feet of space, you can start putting multiple males in there.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of room. So that's a good point. You could do a 10-foot betta tank.
Leopard Danios. Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. What do we got here? Lone Mind in a Crowd, Red Zebras, and Demasoni with Pseudotropheus acei. Do you foresee any behavioral issues with that mix in a 65-gallon overstock tank? So you're Okay, so I guess the first question is, your 65 going to be the same as the 40 breeder, only taller? Or are we dealing with a 4-foot 65? I think your issue is going to be the Demasoni, because they do get pretty aggressive. So I always recommend, Demasoni look amazing, but if you want the look of the Demasoni without all the problems, Your red zebras and your ACI would get along much better with the Psilocybe because your males are going to get that same color as the Demasoni do, and then your females are going to get like a yellowy color. So that might be a better way to go because the Demasoni can be a little rough. And then you also get that extra color, right? So right now you'd have orange with your red zebras, you'd have the blue with the dark blue with the Demasoni, you'd have blue with yellow with the Pseudotropheus ACI, but your female Psilocybe would give you some of that yellowy orange, which would be pretty cool. All right. Kenji23, can you do a South American live stream, please? Yeah, we're definitely going to add that. Geos, Severums, Discus, Angels, definitely. We love all those fish. That is certainly going to be in the mix for sure. Now, what do you say? We do 2 more?
Oh, how many cichlids? Wait.
What?
Yeah, how many cichlids can you put in a 10-gallon, if any?
I would say safely none in a 10-gallon. And the only reason why I say that is, yes, it is very possible to breed Maltese. Some, the smaller shell dwellers, I've seen people breed, have a breeding pair of Crebensis in a 10-gallon. But I think often those setups tend to be very specialized for breeding and not necessarily ideal for my everyday tank where I'm just going to have these fish in there. Even like the shell dwellers, yeah, you can pull it off. And then what happens when they start breeding and you've got 4, 6, 8 of them in there, and then you've got like 15 more, and you got to get them out of there because it's going to get too overcrowded. So, Hardeep asked a good question. Other than labs and ACI, which Mbuna look better on a darker substrate background? Cheers. Labs, ACI, red zebras, to me, they're one of the best looking fish on when it's up against a dark substrate and a dark background. That reddish, and the males get kind of a pinkish color. Those are really cool. I'm trying to think other ones that there are actually white labs. So instead of yellow labs, they're whiter in color and they actually get a little bit of purplish. Those look really cool on dark substrate with a dark background as well. Let's see here. All right, so legend fish tanks. Can electric blue acaras be with African cichlids? I try not to. So the short answer is I've done it. The long answer is I don't think I would try to do it on purpose again. And the reason for that is the electric blue acaras are some of the least aggressive cichlids I have ever kept in my life. And even the more mellow African cichlids tend to be too aggressive for them.
Yeah.
I think. So, yeah. All right, let's do one more. How about one more question? What do you think? What do you got?
Sure.
Find something.
Oh, I saw one of my favorites.
What?
Bolivian Rams.
Bolivian Rams.
Canadian A.
What about the Bolivian Rams?
I don't know.
You just wanted to shout out?
Yeah.
Was there a question associated with Bolivian Rams?
I don't know. I just like I said, it just caught my eye because I love Rams.
Okay, so you saw somebody say Bolivian Rams, and that was
cichlids.
A thing. Okay, they are cichlids. They are cichlids, not African cichlids.
Right, I know, but they're small cichlids.
They are also small cichlids. Very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jana asks, how big do cichlids normally get, and how big of a tank do you suggest putting them in? The wonderful thing about cichlids, even if we're just talking about African cichlids, the smallest ones, the shell dwellers, they can be an inch. 20-gallon is going to be more than enough space. So if you're looking at shell dwellers like Maltese and Simless, 20-gallon, you're going to be set. There are African cichlids that get well over 2 feet, and they get very aggressive, and they require a tank in the many, many hundreds of gallons. So they are all over the place. I would say for the African cichlids, if for someone who's a beginner with a well-cycled tank, meeting the water parameters we talked about earlier in the stream, if you have a 20-gallon and you want to try some shell dwellers, that might be one of the more interesting things to do.
All right. You said Bolivian Rams with black background.
Yes.
So yes,
love that.
absolutely.
Yeah. All
yeah.
Rams
Yeah.
with a dark substrate and a dark background just look amazing. I really wish we could keep the German blues because they're so cool, but we just don't do well with them. But the Bolivian Rams, with the dark black background and the substrate, what's cool about it, it takes time. You got to be patient. But especially the males, when they get older and they start to show that nice blue iridescence on their belly and their throat color starts to come through, man, And they get the red tips to their fins. You know, a lot of times people see them in the stores and they're like, huh, Bolivian Ram, that's kind of cool. I mean, I like the way it's showing its fins off, and it's sort of grayish, especially when they're small. And you're like, well, I'll try it out. And then fast forward a while, you know, 6-8 months, like, oh, this is a cool fish. So yeah. All right.
Now, Hardy, I don't know where it was. I saw something. Well, first of all, you're in London. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you said puffers or bettas, I think. And that just made me think, if I would have one species only tank, it'd be pea puffers.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Big ginormous tank with bunches of pea puffers. That would be great.
Hold on, I saw a question I wanted to answer. All right, last one, Enrique. Best method to remove nitrates. So for us, there's 2 things. One, water changes, because we talked about this in the filtration live stream. Standard filtration. I'm not talking about the specialty stuff and the specialty setups and media. Doesn't remove nitrates. So it's water changes, which is why we do them, and plants. Those are the 2 easiest, least complicated ways to do it. All right. I think we are going to call it a night. Thank you so much once again for being here. Really appreciate it. We will see you next Wednesday. For sure.
Yeah, and again, for Ugly Sweater Day.
If you
wear your ugly sweaters.
Yeah, it's all about next week it's wear your ugly sweaters, and you got to tell us what you're wearing, because I'm gonna bust it out. I promise you're gonna look at this live stream. You're gonna have to just treat it as a podcast at that point, because you're not gonna want to watch it because it's gonna be horrible. And again, if you want to see more of that cool tank back there, you can check that out too on the small scape. And again, thank you for everybody. Thank you, moderators, for doing everything you do, and for the super chats, everyone. And we will see you next week.
Bye.